Welcome to the 2025 Madeleine, Kētēskwew, Dion, Stout Lecture. From 1989 to 1993, Madeleine Dion Stout was the founding director of the Centre for Aboriginal Culture and Education at Carleton. And from 1993 to 2001, she was the first Indigenous professor in the School of Canadian Studies here. Some of you may know her. She's a trailblazer, to be sure. She's a Cree author, speaker, and healthcare professional. She was appointed to the Order of Canada in 2015. She's from Kētēskwew Cree Nation in Treaty 6 territory near Bonnyville, Alberta. My name is Carmen Robertson. I'll be the moderator for today. And I'm from Treaty 4 territory. There's a lot of us here from the West today, which is, West is best, so I'm told when you live in Ottawa. I'm a Cookum or an Unchi, depending on who you want to follow. My grandmother is from Standing Buffalo First Nation in the Qu'Appelle Valley. And I'm a professor of Indigenous art history, as well as an independent curator and sometimes professional moderator. Sorry. We have a great opportunity today to meet the Wolf Babes, and I'll just tell you a little bit about their collective. They're curators and artists who've come together across territories and through generations. They recognize and work through the complexities of shared connections to the city of Ottawa and respective ancestral lands. The Wolf Babes bring together individual areas of interest and expertise in architecture, curatorial practice, public art, design, and research, which we'll talk more about today. And the global pandemic fostered a space for them to continue to build a support system within and through each other. Their practice is informed by dialogic processes and methodologies, and we will discuss that more today as well. So I'm going to start by introducing Joy T. Arcand. Joy? Hello. Joy is an artist from Muskeg Lake Cree Nation in Saskatchewan Treaty 6 territory, and she resides in Ottawa. She has a Bachelor's of Fine Arts from the University of Saskatchewan. In 2018, Joy Arcand was shortlisted for the prestigious Sobey Award. And her practice includes photography, digital collage, graphic design, and characterized by visionary and definitely subversive reclamation and indigenization of public spaces through the use of Cree language and syllabics. She is the co-founder of the Red Shift Gallery, a contemporary Indigenous art gallery in Saskatoon. And she was founder and editor of the Indigenous art magazine, Kimawan, and has curated several exhibitions. Joy also recently graduated with a BA in Nehiyaw from Blue Quills. And here's Danielle, or Danny Printup, is Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe arts administrator and curator from Kētēskwew, Anishinaabe in Quebec, with maternal roots to Ohsweken, Ontario. She is a Bachelor of Honors in Art History from University of Guelph, and she later worked for the National Gallery of Canada before completing the RBC Indigenous Training Program in Museum Practices at the Museum of History, Canadian Museum of History. She has also worked at the Saw Gallery, the Indigenous Arts Center, the City of Ottawa Public Art Program, and she's currently is the Indigenous Engagement Curator at Carleton University Art Gallery. Most recently, Danny curated a solo exhibition, Christian Chapman Runs in the Hills, which was represented at QAG in September 2023. Danny is also doing her MA in art history at Carleton with me. Tanis Warren, is a Cree artist from Saskatoon, Treaty 6 territory, and she's Plains Cree and a member of Poundmaker Cree Nation. Is that sounding very echoey, or is that just me? Okay, sorry. Their growing body of studio work considers notions of memory through place, while questioning the impulse of colonial thought imbued in created space. And Tanis Worm is a graduate of the Ottawa School of Arts Fine Art Diploma Program, specializing in traditional printmaking methods and oil painting. The scope of their practice also includes tattooing, drawing, collage, performance, and sculpture. And they sit on the board of directors of Chokecherry Studios, a community-led nonprofit focused on education, training, and mentorship to young and emerging artists in inner-city Saskatoon. Worm has their Bachelor of Architectural Studies from here at Carleton, and is currently completing their Masters of Architecture at the University of Toronto. And last but not least is Quinn. No, Quinn's having a nap. Is Alex Navagawa. She's Anishinaabe and Gahanyega, and a member of Whitefish River First Nation with maternal roots to Gahanyega Mohawk territory. Navagawa grew up in Ottawa, Ontario. She's a PhD candidate in visual culture at the Institute of Comparative Studies in Literature, Arts, and Culture at Carleton. And she recently held the position of Associate Curator of Historical Indigenous Art at the National Gallery since 2018, and is now a lecturer at Carleton University, teaching Indigenous museology and public history through a cross-appointment with the Department of History and Curatorial Studies. She has experience working with historical belongings in art institutions internationally and has worked with contemporary Indigenous artists and communities on a range of creative, cultural, or curatorial projects. And Alex's practice centers around story, visiting, relationality, craft, and care. And she's also a great colleague here at Carleton. So this is going to be mostly a somewhat informal discussion between myself and the Wolf Babes today. And then we'll have time for questions and time for eating as well. As you can probably smell, there's some very good food here. So I'm going to move over here. Can you tell us about how you came together in this territory as a collective? And this is wide open, whoever wants to jump in.
I think while going through the
Oh, yeah.
slides. Yeah, sure.
Can I grab that?
Yes.
So we have a creation story. Sky woman. No, I'm just kidding.
Prefer to be here all day.
Yeah. Okay, so where should we start?
Well, I think we've all come from different places, as you've heard from our intros, and some of us have known each other for a really long time. Tanis and I, our families have known each other for many, many years, I think since probably
like 30 years.
Yeah. Both of our, my dad and Tanis's parents are Indigenous rights lawyers. And you can imagine in like the 70s and 80s, that was like a very tiny, tiny world. So they all, like all the Indian lawyers kind of knew each other. And then they had kids who were all kind of the same age. And so Tanis and I have known each other since I think I was 9. So we really grew up together. And then ended up just kind of, both really interested in the art world. And then Tanis moved to Ottawa in, what year was that? When you started your...
Yeah, probably like 2016. But before that, I met Joy in Saskatchewan, and our families actually knew each other also for years and years and years. Her community and my mom's community are right next to each other, so our families really go way back. I think we're actually probably related too, even further back. So I knew Joy in Saskatoon, and being an artist, I was just so intrigued by her work. And when she moved to Ottawa, I think that was 2016 as
Yeah.
well, around then.
2015, 10 years.
Yeah, like I was looking for a change as well. I was kind of, done with tattooing, but wanted to still stay in the arts, and recommended, trying out Ottawa. I went to Ottawa School of Art, fantastic place. And after that, I think we met Danny, but
Yeah.
Alex and Danny had already known each other before that.
So it's really like that Always Sunny in Philadelphia character, the Charlie, with the connections and everything.
Put
The
that one.
string on the,
Yeah. And I would say that's how we met too, is just our like research. And within the Indigenous arts community, it's like very fraught, I would say, with a lot of like lateral violence, toxicity. So it's hard to find community and people that you trust and relationships that you trust. And so we actually kind of became friends through like talking about pretendians, some of which have come out as actual pretendians that we knew, and we have a list now of future ones. But that just speaks to Joy's position as doing a lot of genealogy and research. And so
Another pandemic hobby.
And then so once the group chat forms, it just kind of goes from there. And we started meeting during the pandemic to talk about a lot of what we were seeing. And so I think we found community in each other in a lot of ways. And then we all bring different lived experiences and interests into the work that we do. And we're going to talk more about that and how we work collaboratively.
Yeah, we had a lot of Zoom parties. Remember those? We won't go into the details, but they were pretty fun.
Yeah, it was a great time. I think, for folks, it was very like isolating, and we all knew each other, but then the group chat kind of formed, and then we thought like, oh, let's have like a kind of a Zoom hang, and then it became a regular thing. And then we all just got really, really close, and I think we built like a lot of trust with each other. Like it was always like, what happens in the Zooms and the group chat stays in the group chat, which is so central to what we do too. Is like we've built this really strong relationship network, and like really a feeling of like trust. Like I would trust these folks like with my life, really. I don't want to do anything alone anymore. Everything I want to do like with them.
Yeah, I mean, being in that kind of group chat, like it felt really natural to just start wanting to create things together. We had so many wonderful ideas, and when you're just surrounded by people that are like so supportive, you really feel like you can do anything. And we went after like really big projects, some that may have been like too big to chew at the time, but like there's no regrets there. We learned so much from every experience.
That's great. I've just realized that I know your dad. Of course, I used to teach at First Nations University. My mom also knows your dad. So it's a small world.
Oh yeah.
Well, I love the idea of the creation story, and I think it speaks to that sense of sort of generous humor that's part of your collaborative work. And your methodology. I want you to talk about the aspects of this great methodology that you have on the screen.
So anything that we share too, I just want to acknowledge it belongs to bigger spaces that we hope to represent, but a lot of our methodology, is thanks to scholars like you, Carmen, and you, Alex, I would say, of people that have eloquently written and articulated these things that feel so big to us. And I think one of them would be visiting, which is something that we did during the pandemic, but something that we do in each of our own individual like community networks, our family networks, our professional networks. And you've probably heard this term used, but simply put, it's just a slower, deeper, more intentional way of building relationships with people that you trust, that you even feel that you can engage in a collaborative learning experience with. One that is, non-hierarchical, where we have the teacher kind of student relationship. It kind of disrupts that and keeps knowledge, in a more fluid, circular way, and acknowledges knowledge and learning as like a living entity in itself, right? So visiting, and it's hard to like build visiting into grants that we write, right? It's like, how do we want to be able to develop relationships in a way that feels genuine to how we developed relationships, which is like, you know, learning from our aunties, going over to their house. I remember being a little girl in KZ and just like knocking, being like a kid, can I come over? And just like, you know, being welcomed into a home, and then just learning things that way, where it's not like a classroom kind of setting, but they are you know, initial classrooms. I don't know if anyone wants to add to that concept.
Yeah, I think what's hard when you're trying to, like this like methodology of like visiting, like a lot of that comes from like spaces like in your living room or like your kitchen table, like that comes from a lot of like primarily like Métis scholarship and that Carmen's also been involved in. And so it's really about like just creating like a place of like comfort, which is really hard to replicate or to bring into institutional spaces. So like with teaching, I know Carmen and Omiyasu as well, like we've tried to bring in that feeling of like a visiting and like a slower pace where you're really just focused on like relationship building and like building trust with people. But a semester is only 12 weeks and you only have like, you know.
It's 13, Alex.
Yeah, 13. I'm still new here. And I'm on parental leave right now.
Sorry.
And yeah, so 13 weeks, you have like, you know, 3 hours a week. So there's all these like limitations put on it. And there's always like, there has to be like an outcome. Like even if we want to destabilize, like I want to treat my students like colleagues, like I'm still their teacher and I have to like give them grades. Like there's something very, like there's like a conflict there. And so that is definitely like a struggle. I think a lot of like Indigenous and BIPOC educators are really trying to like grapple with is how do we create these spaces of like safety and like meaningful exchange and reciprocity. How can we do that in spaces that like historically have been like very harmful, very exclusionary to like a lot of our principles, including things like being like kitchen table talks and visiting
And there's nothing very kitchen table-y about a black barrier between us and you. And I did ask for the chairs to be changed and the table to be taken away, but it's a work in progress.
We're chief and council. If anyone wants change, we cannot offer that at cost.
But a lot of it does, like it involves like sharing food, like having tea together and like, you know, when you have like that visiting, like, and people kind of feel comfortable with each other, like you just start like chatting, like freely sharing and like chatting, and there's no like transaction. Like I think what you were saying about like grants, like it's hard to say, it's hard to know what's gonna come out of like visiting. Like we didn't know Wolf Babe was gonna come out of visiting and the works that we've created. Like it's just something that, this beautiful thing that happened, but it was unpredictable.
Yeah, very organic.
Yeah.
And you can't plan for those kinds of things.
Unless ancestors did, and we're like, aha.
Yeah. Finally.
And then in terms of spilling tea, I mean, we all, you know, BIPOC too, it's like it's a way of engaging with each other that like I think comes from, you know, creating safety like amongst our communities and like keeping each other safe. And it's something that we've needed to do within the Indigenous arts community as curators, as artists that are entering institutions. Like, is this place going to be safe for me? Like, is this curator nice? Is this, you know, they often want to indigenize their way of doing things, but they don't know what that means. And so it's the arts worker, curator, that's also the social worker helping that learning be facilitated and enacted. And for us, spilling tea is also, you know, sharing research. It's, you know, you calling your kokum, oh, my kokum knows about this.
Yeah, it's like a built-in vetting system as well, where we can approach each other with, you know, no judgment or anything, but just building off of each other's experiences with working in different areas. It's really helpful to have a sounding board for, potential projects, that kind of stuff.
And being noisy.
Yes.
Nosy.
Nosy. Why did I say
are
noisy?
noisy.
I
We
don't
are
know.
noisy.
You're noisy. You're nosy. I like nosy better.
Yes, both
Yes.
work.
Yeah, I mean, being nosy, like these all really go like together, right? Like it's not just about, being nosy. It's also about, doing that in a space where you feel comfortable with folks that you feel comfortable with. And yeah, like same with like spilling tea, so to speak, or like gossiping or whatever. It's allowing yourself to be vulnerable and to share, vulnerable things about you as well. Yeah, it's just good sense.
Yeah, and I think too for us, like we know that we come from like nosy ancestors and like people that, want to know for, in terms of safety, but also like what we're talking about before of like how it opens up things for chance encounter, like to have an open, playful, intuitive way of learning. So we recently wrote an essay. It's an essay.
Yeah, I think it might be.
It's coming up.
Oh,
Yeah.
Don't give it all away yet.
so we've all done different research at different, institutional collections and museums. But this one in the picture is from the Crown Indigenous Relations in Northern Canada art collection, also known as like the INEC collection. And so when I would say this collection versus like other institutional collections are a place that would let us bring this methodology of being nosy to destabilize the works held, in care by them. And that allows for, us to like really just like see and visit. And it gives a lot of agency to the objects to like allow, to pull you into the directions that the visit might, happen. But it's also a way of destabilizing like collecting practices of like, well, give us the call numbers. Here's a crappy PDF with very low quality images. Let us know what you want to see.
If there are images.
Yeah, if there are images, let us know what you want to see. An example would be the Museum of History, where they bring you to this room that's like completely sterile and white, removed from the vaults. It's like, let us be nosy. Let us go in there and walk around and see what we want to see. Like, let us visit, with these things, and let that visit determine the, learning that happens.
Yeah. It goes back to those story keepers too. So when you visit with them,
Yeah.
new ideas come to play.
Yeah, and visiting, reunion, chance encounter.
And so this essay that we've written for Forging, that should be coming out soon. Forging is online first, Indigenous run journal that comes out of the Forge Project, which is run by Candace Hopkins, who's just like a superstar in the Indigenous art world and just the world probably in upstate New York. But this idea of like being nosy, so we had started doing this project. We were asked to curate a show for Anishinaabe, the Indigenous Film and Media Arts Festival, which ended up being at Gallery 101, and we'll show images of that in a bit. But when we were just kind of starting out, like we didn't know what we were going to do yet. We just needed like some inspiration. And one of the staff members at CERNAC was like, okay, so how do you want to start? How do you guys want to start looking at work? And Danny was like, oh, like we'll just be nosy. We'll just like go in the vault, poke around and see what like jumps out. And I was like, Danny, this is amazing.
It's her methodology.
And we were like, we have to get like your name on this. And it was so, I just thought like brilliant. Because so often, I don't know how many people have spent time, going into archives, going into collection spaces, but it's very like restricted and limited, and you're not allowed to go in there and just be nosy. You have to prepare like a list. There's like a scheduled visit. It's like highly monitored. It's really not like kind of a place where you can visit and stuff. But when you're able to be nosy, like in CERNAC, where we really were invited and welcome to do that, you can just kind of, walk around and be like, oh, like, look at that one. Like, that looks really cool. Who made that? And we laughed in there. We were in there for so long, and we, like, chatted, and some ideas.
We cried.
And we
cried. It was very emotional.
Yeah, and so it really, like Danny was saying, how they just kind of, like, pull at you sometimes, some of these objects and some artworks, and particularly in, like, historical with historical collections, there's these, old belongings, which are older than any living human being, that are like alone in these places, and they want to be visited too, and they want to be reminded that they're like part of life. And so yeah, like chatting around with them, laughing, crying, sharing all of these things, like including them in the visit is really important too. And so that, I think, is what really came out of like this like nosy methodology, which I think is so brilliant, because these like, these archives and like these grids, they don't allow you to kind of move like freely through them, which is what a nosy methodology is.
But it also gives agency to the unseen, right? Which is so important. And like Joy, you've spoken so beautifully about like research that you've done where you found an ancestor, and you said it was like they wanted to be found.
Yeah, it's similar kind of work when you're looking at, I guess it would be documents and records as opposed to objects and belongings, but it's you're being called towards something and you don't even know what it is. And yeah, there's a sense of them wanting you to find them, and it's, I don't know, it's really beautiful when you finally, get that thing you've been looking for so long.
Yeah, great. And so when is that essay coming up?
Soon,
yeah. It's in the last rounds of edits, I think.
Wonderful.
But this also, like we were just chatting about, like when we were thinking through this methodology, and they were like, okay, yes, we've accepted your pitch, now write an essay. We were like, okay.
Yeah.
And so we would have like, these meetings and kind of talk about, different experiences that we have where we've wanted to incorporate that method, or, it was met with like, hesitancy or resistance. And Tanis, I remember you had come to the Museum of History, which it was really great because you had wanted to see some things from Poundmaker with your mom, and we were allowed to be nosy in there. But that was because we connected with the curator specifically. So much of it is like, who do you know? Do you know the right people? So often it's like community doesn't know, like, how can I see my things? Like,
Well, and even within those kinds of spaces, like in the Museum of History, they were already cataloging, where these belongings come from. So somebody had already decided and had taken these items and these, artifacts, I guess, and placed them somewhere. So, and decided where, where it belonged. So if you belonged to the community, you were allowed to see the items. But if you didn't belong to that community,
Right.
And so because someone else had already decided, like, they choose where these things go, and, they put things in the wrong place all the time, and, they'd say, oh, well, there's nothing from this community, for example, like from my dad's community, when we know that's simply just not true, but it's very limited to the way that they can catalog the materials.
yeah, the documentation of like particularly, like archival things, historical things was so poor. Like so often, they didn't record names, they didn't record places where things were collected from. Yeah, often items are in the wrong, region, and it's a mess in there. So, and then sometimes too, you don't know what you're looking for until you see it. So when you allow people to kind of explore and be nosy in collections and archives, it does allow for this like chancy, process, which in our essay we talk about like how so many of our creation stories and our intellectual traditions, like the world was created through like a chancy, serendipitous, kind of funny, silly process. Like that's what a lot of our stories encapsulate, is like things happen and they are this kind of like, when you have like the perfect storm of things. And that's when you go into collections and you can allow people to just kind of look through on their own. You will get like pulled into things or see things out of the corner of your eye, being like, oh, like what is that? And
Even certain smells.
yes,
Right? Yeah, even when we were in there.
Yeah.
yeah. So I think like incorporating that into like education or any kind of work that you're doing is like to encourage people to be nosy, because it is freeing. It's also, for us, we equated it with like our sovereignty, like being able to think and work in a way that our bodies and our minds can freely move, and to kind of break free of this idea that everything is,
Rigid.
very neat and tidy. Yeah, disciplines and, boxes and categories.
Structures.
Structure, yeah.
Great. And so tell me a little bit more about some of these other chancy things that you've been able to explore.
We want to go to the next.
Oh,
That was it. I was going to take it away from you.
Like that one. Craft.
I just zoned out. Okay, so
Remind me of this one. Tackling. A lot of what?
We're
also we're witches.
Is this a wicked?
A lot of it's like this wolf babe I find, because I find so much in the work that I do, outside of wolf babe, I have to be like super serious, like I'm a lecturer here, or like before I was working at the National Gallery, like there's this expectation that you have to have, with being nosy, I think in Western culture is seen as like a bad thing. But for us, like our aunties are nosy, kids are nosy. These are people that are highly revered in our communities. And they're funny. And so we try and kind of like, I think, incorporate like a lot of humor in what we do. And I think with this, we love the craft. It's an excellent 90s movie.
Excellent film.
but I guess
Oh, yes, this was about the
to talk about the power of four, I think like for myself as well, I'm a visual artist, I'm self-employed, so much of my day is just like by myself, like tinkering, like sometimes I don't know if I even speak to another person for like hours on end, but it's very like, the type of work is, I'm sure you can all relate to that. Sometimes you get in your little bubble. So any chance I get to work with these folks, it's just like so much more fun. It's so much more enriching because you don't know what is going to happen, So like Alex said, like I don't want to work alone anymore. And so if, say, for example, one of us has some kind of issue that we need to confront in our professional or personal lives, whatever, we know that we can count on the power of four to kind of like gas each other up and like give ourselves the confidence we need to do that thing that maybe we were kind of like, oh, I don't know if I should, or like, you just get all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I can do this. Yeah. So that's kind of what that means to me.
But in this also related to, there was a call that came out. I don't know if we want to name the gallery. Maybe not.
Unnamed gallery.
The Unnamed Gallery. They're working through things and trying to be better, so we don't want to throw them under the bus. But they put out a call for an Indigenous curator that was going to be like long-term. It was going to be like 3 or 4 years to help them connect with like Indigenous community in the region that they represented, and to bring Indigenous artwork, Indigenous art shows into their gallery space. And we chatted about it, and we were like, oh, like let's apply. This is kind of neat. Like it's not like a full-time gig. It allows us to still do like our own like day jobs, but then we get to do this other thing. And so it was really, we applied. We put together a comprehensive like application. It was a lot of work, and then we got an interview. We prepared for the interview, and then when we got into the interview, we felt like we were almost interviewing them. Like we were asking them, oh, so what kind of funding do you have to pay community members, like Indigenous community members? And they said, oh, we didn't think about that. We were like, okay, how about like very, simple things that really showed that they hadn't done a lot of the work. And then, we felt like fine, whatever, if they were willing to like work with us and give us like a budget to pay people well, pay like Native folks well. But then I think like weeks went by, we got emails from them being like, oh, you'll hear from us soon, you'll hear from us soon. And then finally we did, and they said, we've decided to cancel the project, the position, due to unforeseen administrative circumstances. And we were like, what? Like there was no, like, nothing to explain why or what happened. And we felt like really kind of hurt by it because they had also asked us for ideas. That was part of the interview. Like they were like, what ideas do you guys have for this space? And to,
It was to curate shows. So they actually wanted, what are your dreams, right? And so we're sharing these
We're like,
wonderful ideas.
We have dreams.
And the next thing we know, they're kind of being crushed because they're telling us, well, we have no money for anything. And, because we are pretty nosy, we were talking to other artists who are also interested in curating. And, they also felt the same way, kind of, we put a lot of work into this. We looked forward to this. And now, nobody gets this job.
It felt a bit extractive because we were sharing so much great intellectual,
Yeah.
They kept asking us questions.
They kept asking us. It was a really long interview. And then
we put a lot of labor into it.
And then after, when we all got together, it was another example of just gassing each other up, being like, well, you know what, we consulted, maybe we should get paid for our interview. And that came from us all deciding, we put a lot of labor into this. They gained something from it. Let's invoice them. And then we did.
Invoice them.
And they paid us.
That was definitely something that we were like, I would never do that by myself. I would be pissed off and just stew and not do anything about it. But by submitting an invoice, I think, because one of the curators there, I think, did have our back, but she was in a, a junior role, and she said that it went all the way up, through their board of directors and everything, and they chatted about it, and they were like, okay, we really need to do some work. Thank you for this. So it ended up being a really positive experience in the end, but that was something that none of us would have done by ourselves. It was all the power of four. We were like, yeah, this isn't right, It was extractive.
That's great, because this happens so often. Power of four.
Yes.
That's important.
Yeah.
Good. Well, give us some more. Where's the next covenant?
So this was a recent art project called Please Remove Your Shoes, and from 2023, so made during the pandemic. It now belongs in the City of Ottawa Art Collection, and this was in the mayor's office at
I
one
think it
point.
still is.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's right.
So
I don't think he understood it.
That's interesting. But this came from Joy, and this is when one of us will already have a network or relationship tapped in, and we bring it to the table. So.
Yeah, so I was invited to do this Welcome Mat project, and it was all around the city in 2022, I guess. And it was one of those things where this would be so much more fun if Wolf Babe did this. So we kind of put our heads together to come up with what exactly we would do. And then because it was the pandemic, we actually didn't get to gather together to do it, but we what's it about again? Just kidding. We met on Zoom, and we came up with the concept of using porcupine quills as a medium, and
Yeah, so the welcome mats, I can't remember the artist. Who came up
Oh, Christos Pantieris.
Yeah, he came up with this great concept to have local artists create a welcome mat. Everybody was given this IKEA mat, and it was really about welcoming, kind of Ottawa, downtown Ottawa, kind of everything opening up again, stores opening up again, bringing people back out to, go into shops, and something that we thought about was, we don't always feel welcome in these spaces. So we actually wanted to display our work at a store that wouldn't allow us to use our status cards, because that's such an issue.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, so we decided, why don't we, kind of borrow from a relative, the porcupine, how oftentimes you need to protect yourself. So that's why we used that material. And yeah, put it on a welcome mat using this text to just show that, welcome doesn't always really mean welcome.
Yeah, not everyone is welcome.
Not everyone's welcome.
Yeah, and this idea of being mindful, guest host protocols, which is a big thing in Indigenous gatherings and principles, is you have to be aware of who your host is, and how do you host, how can you host people, how do you be a good guest, and so this was kind of a reminder to you have to walk softly, you have to walk gently, and just be mindful of whose land you're on.
Yeah, just the idea of, the relatives.
Yes.
And what porcupine mean to artists when you see a dead porcupine on the side of the road, for example, and you want to take it home.
Yeah.
So it has such deep resonance, and that complexity comes through in this so beautiful. Thank you for that.
So this is called Hearth. So this is at the University of Guelph in the Wellness Center. So both Alex and I and Joy's sister have studied at the University of Guelph. And, like many places, you find community within the Indigenous people on campus. So this is going to be, in a space where people are seeking wellness. And so the concept for this was, centered that methodology of visiting. And so it's a light installation, and the image that is used is a digital reproduction of a drum that belongs in Tanis's family. And so it's, one of those things that kind of is playful in that it's not quite a drum, it's not quite like a moon in how it looks, but it has elements of those beautiful objects and those beings. And the light pattern is actually sequenced of a pandemic conversation that we all had together, where I gave them all COVID.
It was like an in-person conversation, and we all got COVID.
It was our first time meeting up.
We hadn't seen each other in so long, and we gathered. We visited for like 7 hours.
Yeah.
We had Chinese food, tea, and we had this Zoom mic in the middle recording this. And after a while, we just forgot it was there.
Yeah.
And then, so it took us a while to find the right people to work with. When we eventually started working with Andrew.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had to send him our audio file, and we were like,
We were spilling tea.
yeah, he became kind of a member, but not really. He was privy to a lot of things.
Yeah. We made him sign an NDA, though. He knew a lot of people in the arts community, which that we talked about.
Yeah. So he translated like our conversation,
Voices.
our voices, into these light sequences that we would place in the drum, and
I
so.
think there's a video. I don't know.
Oh,
if
the
it'll
next
work,
one,
though.
yeah.
It's really great because you can see the lights as when we're laughing, they just light up. And then there's moments of quiet, and then it just goes
Yeah,
around.
so it really does look very much like a fire. Like, it's very organic. You can see lights coming from different parts of it, and it's just capturing our conversation. And we really wanted to show how, and it being placed in the wellness center, we wanted to show how our visiting really is. It gets healthy for us. It's something that nourishes us. Even though we got COVID that time, usually it's really good for us.
But yeah, we wanted it to remind students, like it's hard being a student, like often folks are away from home for the first time. I know this time of year is like really tough, like the end of term. And so having all gone through that experience ourselves, we wanted to create something like dedicated. I mean, it was our visiting, but it was also just kind of like a love letter to like the student body at Guelph, which is a place that means a lot to several of us. So yeah, to like when students like look at it, to kind of remind them that your ancestors still love to like laugh with you and hear you and be with you. So it was a reminder, I guess, of that presence, that they're not alone.
Nice. What a great
The
project.
video, I think we don't have.
No, I don't.
It's not
think videos-
installed yet. Oh, that's just the lights. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the embedded video, but
It'll be installed, I think, soon
yeah.
Nice.
this month. We'll have some
Yeah,
nice
it's not purple.
install shots at our next presentation.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Oh, so this.
So the future.
Yeah, so now we're going to the future. So When is Future, When is Now was an exhibition that we curated for the Anishinaabe Film Festival in 2024 at Gallery 101. So miigwech to both the festival and to Gallery 101 for hosting us, and then really just allowing us to use the space how we wanted to and be as experimental and playful. So because Anishinaabe is a film and, film, they showcase Indigenous works from, all across Turtle Island. We went back to that element of like, we all grew up with video stores and like visiting the video store, and we all have fond memories of, watching movies and VHS with our families and our cousins. And so we wanted to turn Gallery 101 into like a video store. Which was a lot of fun to do, and so really centered that experience of, encountering film and video, like as an Indigenous person. And so yeah, the artists included, Aileen did an installation. Oh yeah. And then Theo Cuthand, Melissa Jennifer, Tanya Lucan Linklater, Krista Bell Stewart, and all of these minus Aileen's were borrowed from the Cernak art collection. So these are install images. And so we had, the written panels in galleries of like the work and the title. We had it as like VHS containers.
Nice.
Which was really fun. And so, and it allowed people to be interactive, right? To match the work to the VHS cassette.
Yeah, that was a big part of it. Like, I think we were inspired by this idea of like embodied like engagement with like artworks and being nosy. And I had recently gone to a gallery, and my daughter, who was 2, we kept having to like chase her around and be like, oh, you can't touch that, you can't touch that, you can't touch that. And it was like so heartbreaking. And then finally we went to like this workshop area, and she was like, Mama, I can touch these. And I was like, yes, let's get out of here immediately. Because the art world is so not a place for that interaction, for kids, for families. And that is like my life now. Like he comes with me like basically everywhere. And we really want like, our daughter too to be a part of like our lives and what we do. And so this show, it was so like kid friendly, family friendly. People were invited to touch things. So you were asked to like take a cassette, and on the back was the extended label. You were invited to take that up to the space and then bring it back to like the rental shelf. Yeah, it was just really great for that. Like nothing was like precious or breakable. It was, it was really nice.
So that was the gumball machine, work by Aileen Cucci. So this was a part of a series that Aileen did, exploring land acknowledgements, I think.
Yeah.
And so this is like my favorite land acknowledgement, where it is the form of a sticker in a gumball machine that is free at a video store. It's an interesting. Aileen has a very beautiful practice, very thoughtful, and so this was like made perfect sense. And this is where that chance encounter comes of like, spilling tea with someone, and then they become weaved into the projects that you do.
Nice.
And it's just fun for kids. Like my niece Walina came, and like finally she could go into a space and like run around and go upstairs. Like it was, and then my auntie and uncle, like it brought them back too. And so this is like the outside, which is so interesting because I remember Smoke Signals, the movie poster, like movie posters and Native memory.
Oh yeah.
Because it's like, any kind of representation of yourself when you a young Native person in a world that, feels so not for you becomes so important.
Yeah.
And so we really bring our heart, our memories, our relationships into the work that we do.
Yeah, so we had Smoke Signals, and then Reservation Dogs, which I think is kind of like the current,
Version.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a space that makes us so happy and brings us so much joy because it's a recreation of an auntie's living room. Also, I would say like an uncle's room in an unfinished basement.
Yeah, definitely.
All we needed was like workout.
Rec room.
Yeah. But we brought snacks. We had borrowed Chris's couch, and we had transformed this space into a living room. So it's interesting juxtaposition between downstairs area and then the upstairs area, right? But both kind of go back to that relationship that we have with film and video. And a lot of these items, like what we have done as Indigenous people, is repurpose things, right? Make things useful for ourselves. And so a lot of these posters were from Joy, your collection, from home that you would.
Yeah, or my video collection. Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, and the
Some
posters.
gems in there.
Yeah, a lot of stuff, like we were working on like a tight budget. Hi, sweetie. We were working on like, super tight budget. And then we also wanted to just be mindful, to not spend too much money and to also be like environmentally conscious. So we didn't want to use like, press on like labels and stuff, which is why we had that old school projector downstairs that showed the intro text for the exhibition. And everything was like sourced either through like our friends, like people that, we borrowed like Chris's couch, who is one of the guys from Anishinaabe. We got things from thrift stores. Joy brought things from her childhood home.
Yeah,
We drove it across the country.
Yeah, we all have stuff of ours that are in there, and
So it was super fun to just put
Facebook
the
Marketplace.
Facebook Marketplace. And going on to Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
Which is so
because
native.
the budget was tight, but also we wanted to create our living room, and you can't buy that stuff new anyway. So it worked out that everything was borrowed, even the panels on the wall.
Yes.
It was perfect. Like everything just really came together.
Love it. I love to see Atta and Arjuat in there as well.
Yeah, right. I mean,
that was
everyone
borrowed.
is seeing these.
That was borrowed from Barry Pottle. That poster.
Nice. Great.
The
And then-
Warriors.
So people could go up there, and we had like a bowl of chips, and the artwork that's being shown on the screen is by Theo Cuthand.
Right.
And so folks could go up there and take in the artwork. But then when we would go through the work, sometimes we would see folks just hanging out in there, and I think we had like a deck of cards. Like we really wanted it to be like a place of like a visiting space.
Yeah.
Like how do you
Back
do
to
that?
your whole methodology as well.
Yeah.
We've got
Yeah.
time for one more slide, I think.
Yeah, well, it really, I guess, builds on to Lulu.
Our next project.
Yeah.
Ooh,
This was also one of those chance encounters based off of just being open and having past relationship building and stuff like that. So in last June, we were invited to the NESA conference in Bodø, Norway. And when we were there, I had previously gone to Norway with the Saw Gallery Nordic Lab as the former director. And I had met a lot of Sami artists there, and so we had the chance to go there, and it was amazing. And I got to reconnect with some folks there. And through that meeting, we were invited by Lulia Biennalen to co-curate and present new work in 2027 in Sweden.
Wonderful.
So we are so excited to go back to Sapmi territory. We'll be there at least 3 times in the next 2 years to really build relationships with artists there. We're co-curating it with Carola Gran and the group New Red Order from the States, all Indigenous curators. And we've got exciting stuff we're working on.
Let's meet back here to go back through that. Well, this is incredible, and what a beautiful opportunity for us all to visit. And one of the things that I try to do here at Carleton is to shake up that order. And so part of shaking up this order is we have some amazing food here. And so instead of doing the usual Q&A, I thought, what if we all got up and had some food and visit all together when we're not on a podium? And so I think that it'll give everybody a chance to visit. There's 4+ members of the Wolf Babes now. And I want to thank you all for taking some time to really share the incredible things that a power of 4 can do. And so thank you all.